Hey guys, my name is Eric, and today we're going to be talking about the SCAR16 versus the Sig Spear versus the Palmetto State Jackal. Go ahead and roll the intro. Hey guys, thanks for checking out another HatchetCast episode, and today we have a very special episode, and we're going to be doing a battle of the pistons. Now, understand we are going to be doing multiple different series of this, where we are battling different piston type rifles against each other, and then kind of rating them. But for today, we're going to be going with the SCAR16 from FN versus the Sig Spear LT 5.56 versus the Palmetto State Armory Jackal. Now, all of these guns are in 5.56. They are all shorter systems and not a full-length gun. So we wanted to kind of go with a more smaller package for this battle. Before we get started, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. It really does help out the channel. If you really want to help out the channel, a lot of you guys have noticed that you are being either unsubscribed or you're not seeing our video in your feed. One way that you can help defeat that is obviously the notification bell, but YouTube has its algorithm that limits how much reach that we have. So if you get something out of this video or out of other videos we've done in the past, organically share them with a friend or a family member. Also, make sure you guys comment below if you have any experience with any of these platforms, what your experiences were. Guys, if you have questions, go down to the comment section. There is usually a lot of people that are willing to answer your questions, a ton of knowledge, and a lot of fun down in the comment section, to include a little bit of trolling that happens from here and then. So what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to talk about piston qualities and what makes piston guns so cool, or what kind of stinks about them. Then we'll talk about the rating categories, which is going to be the price point of each gun, the operating system efficiency, and the ergonomics, and then also the aftermarket support. We're going to jump right back into it with an overall rating for every single gun that we have, and then a general conclusion to sum it all up. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into what are some of the great qualities with piston type guns. So when it comes to piston rifles, usually, especially the more modern ones, you're going to have a lot of really cool capabilities that you don't get with a traditional AR. Now, traditional AR, or direct impingement gas system, has, as some would quote, less reliable. That is definitely something that is a tenable point to be argued, but with these, they are quote unquote more reliable. You have a larger bolt mass that is moving back and forth, and you also don't have a buffer system that you have to worry about. This allows you to run a folding type stock. Now, if you wanted to run a folding stock on like an AR-15, you're gonna have to run something like a law folder, which is going to have some different or more interesting complicated parts. But with a piston type gun, you can attach a standard folding stock to it, and you can make this a very small, tight, and compact package. What's really cool about this is it broadens where you can bring this type of gun. You know, if you're going to be in a EDC type situation, or you want to have an urban setup, or you want to have something if you're doing vehicle operations, having a piston gun with a side folding stock can be a huge benefit to you. The other thing that's great about these types of newer piston rifles is the fact that they can be suppressor optimized. Now, unlike the AK-47 or the Galil, which are some older systems from like the 50s and 70s, you don't have that option. In fact, it's actually really tough to try and regulate a really well suppressed AK. But with these, you can actually adjust how much gas flow is actually going into the gun, and make it more optimized to run suppressed. So that is something else that's a strong advantage to a piston type gun versus an AR-15 type rifle. Now with AR-15 type rifles, you can well tune them so that way they run really well suppressed and unsuppressed, but that is not your run-of-the-mill AR. Most of the time you're gonna have to figure out how to fine tune that. One of the cool things about these newer piston rifles is also the top rail is most of the time going to be monolithic. So with all three rifles that we're talking about today, they do have a monolithic top rail, which means it is one long solid piece. What that allows you to have is the confidence that there's not going to be a shift or a strong shift of that handguard getting loose and throwing off the zero of either your laser device for your night vision operations or other aiming optics and devices that you may have on the rifle. So most of these systems are going to have a handguard that slides onto that monolithic rail, which is not going to affect the accuracy of your aiming devices because you have a monolithic rail system. The other thing that's really neat about these is the fact that they are usually, quote, more rugged and more reliable. But I think that goes back to the user. How often you have to maintenance that, how often you take care of your rifle is usually going to dictate how well that thing is going to run and stay reliable. Now there are some guns and some manufacturers where they just run unreliably due to poor design and QC issues, but most of the time we've found that it doesn't matter what you have, if you are not a good user that maintains and keeps your weapon at perfect operating status by having good situational awareness, then it doesn't really matter what you're running. It's either going to run or it's not, dependent on the user. So let's go ahead and jump into the rating categories, and we will talk about each of these three different rifles with their respective categories. All right, so out of the rating categories, the very first thing that we're going to talk about is price point, and we'll talk about price point for each rifle. Now this has a big role to play how we rate these different guns. Price point, especially today, is going to be a huge factor for a lot of people. You know, the economy is terrible. Your dollar doesn't go as far as it used to. So, you know, price is definitely a huge factor. So we're going to go ahead and start off with the most expensive gun, which is the SCAR. So the SCAR16 is going to run a whopping $3,700 on average, and that's if you can find it, which is an insane price. That has a massive price tag on a system that really, honestly, in my opinion, should not cost that much money. But it does. So for the SCAR16, you're looking at a very hefty price point. And not only is the price point of the SCAR really high, but also so are a lot of the parts. If you want to upgrade this thing, it's going to cost you a pretty penny. So $3,700 is going to be the baseline SCAR price point for your run-of-the-mill stock weapon system. So let's look at what is the price point of the Sig Spear. The Sig Spear is not far behind the SCAR16, and on average, and this is if you can find the Sig Spear LT in stock, it's going to run you about $2,800. Now, that's also a very hefty price tag, but not as unreasonable as the SCAR16. Sometimes you can find them for a little bit less, but most of the time you're not, and that is the MSRP price. So you're probably going to pay even more for both of those weapon systems if you do a private sale from someone who has it that's in stock, just because it's such a rare thing to find. Now let's look at the price point of the JAKL from Palmetto State. The Palmetto State Armory JAKL, which is their newest weapon system in their lineup of the JAKL series, is actually only $1,200, which is a really good price point, and actually a lot more affordable, obviously, than the other three, which is crazy for what you get for the price point. That is an amazing price point and 60% less than the other two rifles. And most of the time, Palmetto State Armory has these things in stock. A lot more frequently, at least, than the Sig Spear or the SCAR16. So if you're looking to get into a rifle today at a price point that's not going to absolutely bankrupt you, the JAKL is a reasonable price point at $1,200 bucks. So now that we know the price point of all of these different systems, let's go ahead and look at their operating system efficiency and ergonomics for each rifle, and we'll start with the JAKL. Now this is a 13.9, and this is in 5.56, of course, and this was actually given to us by our good friends over at A3 Tactical. So if you get a chance, go check out a3tactical.com. They have all kinds of cool accessories, and I'll actually be talking about some of the aftermarket accessories and support that they have for piston type guns. So when it comes to the JAKL, what was my overall experience with the ergonomics, the system, and the aftermarket support that was good or bad? All right, so we'll kind of jump into that. First off, my initial impressions of this thing was it is really, really cool. It has a side charging handle that can actually, when utilizing standard AR-15 controls, it's also a non-reciprocating charging handle, which unlike the SCAR, is really, really nice, and that's something that I think that they did a good job of paying attention to what were some of the problems with other piston type systems. One of them was the fact that their charging handles were reciprocating. So they made this a non-reciprocating handle. The top rail is completely monolithic, and I thought that was absolutely fantastic, and it's a very rugged type of weapon system because the entire thing is made out of metal. Like, it's a heavy duty build. One of the things is on the gas adjustment here, it's very, very easy to adjust the gas. So if you're going to be running suppressed, you can adjust that very, very simply. And it was so easy to adjust, it was almost, in my opinion, it almost felt too easy to adjust. So that was just something I had to kind of keep an eye on, but it did adjust a lot easier. And there's a lot more adjustment that you could do on it than a other type of piston rifle. On the top of the rail, at the very front, they have a like almost an inch amount of section where you don't get extra Picatinny cutout. So you had to mount all of your lasers and things like that behind that section that you couldn't use, which I thought was kind of strange, how they would kind of, not give you some more real estate on that top rail. I didn't understand that. The barrel itself is a very thick, or I would say more of a government profile type barrel. And so it's overall pretty accurate and very rugged looking. One of the things that I noticed about it right off the bat was the fact that it was kind of heavy. It is a heavier gun. It's a little bit more beefy. So if that is a big concern for you, then that's something to consider. One of the things that I did notice is that the lower receiver is actually, if you can look closely, is a standard AR-15 lower receiver. You can actually go on Palmetto State Armory's website and buy a accessory kit, so that way you can take its standard AR-15 lower receiver and slap on their accessory kit so you can run a JAKL. They also sell lower receivers that are already built for the JAKL itself, which is kind of nice. But out of the box, you get a standard AR-15 type lower. So you get a standard AR-15 trigger, you get a standard AR-15 mag release, and bolt catch / bolt release. So that was one thing. Obviously, for the $1,200 price point, you're probably not going to get ambidextrous controls, but the good news is you can take standard AR-15 parts to make this thing completely ambidextrous, to include flaring the wet mag well. So that is something that I wish that would come out of the box, but for the price point, you can't really expect that. So I thought that was really, really neat that you can use standard AR-15 parts. So as far as the aftermarket support, you can literally tap into the entire AR-15 market for aftermarket support for this gun specifically. Now, the other thing that's really neat about this is it's very, obviously heavy modifiable, because you have aftermarket support that's available for this because it's tapping into that already established market. The other thing is the company itself, Palmetto State Armory, is a really good company, and they support your rights as a prepared citizen. I don't know if you guys have looked at their mission statement. For us, it's a big deal, but Palmetto State has a really strong mission statement for supporting the Constitution and supporting shooters to be outfitted with a well-priced and a decent rifle. Now, when I was shooting this thing and running it, one of the things that I did notice right off the bat was that the ejection was kind of weak. And we ran A1, we ran M855, we ran 55 grain. It all ran at okay, but it was kind of a weaker ejection. Now that could have been something that had to be done with our gas adjustments, so we could have adjusted that gas a little bit more, but we wanted to adjust the gas where it was the lightest feeling recoil that we could possibly feel with the gun. And the reason why I was adjusting the gas that way was because this thing actually has a really harsh recoil. More than I would want it to. Not harsh, let me take that back. It was just more than I really would want it to be. It recoiled like an AK-47. Like, you could feel all of that mass coming back at you. And to be honest, like, I had been really looking forward to, out of all three guns, I was really looking forward to the Palmetto State Jackal. And it kind of was very unpleasant to shoot. And that was something that, you know, we passed around to different shooters and had them try it, and they all voiced a similar opinion, that it was just not very comfortable to shoot and operate. Something with the ergonomics of the gun, the way that it would cycle, it was just a very rough type of shooting experience. So if I wanted to make fast shots, I had to let that sight settle, and I had a lot of movement in my reticle. So that is something that I did notice about that. We weren't able to shoot it suppressed because I don't have a dead air can, and this is a pinned and welded muzzle device. So wasn't able to run a suppressor on it to really see, but that might be something that we re-attack later, seeing how the Jackal does running suppressed. Overall, with the company behind this gun, the good price, the amount of aftermarket support that you have for this thing, that helps boost the rating a little bit for me. But the one thing I just really did not enjoy shooting it, just because of how harsh it was, and there was just so much more recoil for a system where I can run you know, a direct impingement AR-15, and I'd almost want to just take that, just because it can run smoothly, I can run it faster, I can run it and keep more control and keep that reticle on target. And it would be a hard sell for me to walk away from that type of system to be able to pick up something like this and run this as my main squeeze. So for that kind of did dampen the rating for us. But yeah, overall, I would say that this had a rating of about a 5 to a 6 point rating out of 10. So Palmetto State Jackal. And yeah, I think it was something that would have been really cool. But now something else that did really help the Jackal is the fact, though, that we had furniture already put on there from A3 Tactical. Had we not had that on there, it would have been a worse shooting experience for sure. But with their folding skeletonized buttstock and also their foregrip and their M-LOK panels, it did make the experience a lot better and allowed us to get more control on the gun when we were running it under pressure and running it pretty hard. So overall, decent system, probably not my first choice. That's just our opinion. All right, so the Sig Spear LT 556. This is an SBR 556. This is actually Roy's, and it is an awesome gun. I'll tell you. Out of all the three, I'll go into it. But this is an 11.5 inch rifle, and it's a very light rifle. It does have a monolithic rail system, just like the Jackal. It does have a really cool bronze type color. This one does have a hot pocket on it from Wiseman Company, and actually it runs a Huxworks suppressor. So that is something that is really, really nice to help optimize some of that gas using a flow-through type can. Talking about the controls on this thing, this is out of the box. It has a flared magwell, it has full ambidextrous controls, and the trigger, man, it's got a great trigger right out of the box. So let's go ahead and just feel what that looks like. So I hit my wall. It is a 2-stage trigger. Hit my wall, got a nice flat face trigger. Squeeze. It's about a 4 to 5 pound pull. And a very audible reset. Very, very easy to feel. Really, really good. So the trigger on this out of the box is fantastic. The only reason I didn't run the Jackal trigger is because you can throw whatever mil-spec AR trigger in there. So if you run it on an AR, it'll be the same on the JAKL. But out of the box with the SIG trigger, the trigger is amazing. Now, this does have it is a curved face trigger, but it is a little bit more flatter than a traditional curved face trigger. The ambidextrous controls for me as a lefty, I really, really, really liked. And I'm not saying that I'm not a huge SIG guy. In fact, I usually look for reasons to not enjoy it, but I really enjoyed this gun. And the ambidextrous controls, you can tell that they put a lot of thought into it. The safety selector, really, really easy to manipulate. The magazine release is not easy to push, but also not too hard to push that button. I've had ambidextrous controls where the mag release is just too easy to push and you actually bump it and drop mags. And I've also had other ones where it was so hard, I just used the standard right-handed standard mag release. So this one is really, really tactile, really, really nice. And the bolt lock and bolt release or the bolt catch and the bolt release are really oversized, which I like. And they have actually like a line type of paddle on the bottom of that. So it's really, really easy to index. And you can tell the difference through feel that it's not your mag release. So I think that they did a lot of good engineering work on that. On the other side, for the ambidextrous bolt lock and bolt release, it's a little lever that's right here by the the ejection port and the dust cover, and it's really, really nice. All you do is you swing that down and it sends that bolt home. The grip is actually a very aggressive straight up and down type grip. It's not super slanted or canted backwards, which I like, especially for shorter guns. And you can also use, you know, their Radian charging handle. I like the Radian charging handle on this versus the typical stock one that they get. It's just too small, so I like a little bit more oversized. The other cool thing about this gun is they put QDs inside the actual lower receiver itself and on the stock. So you can run a QD on the back of the stock. You can run it here where you would typically have your base plate on an AR. And you can obviously just attach a QD attachment on the front along the top of the rail. And they actually usually will provide you a QD point that attaches to the Picatinny on the top of the rail. The gun itself is really, really light. And the side folder is a push button side folder, so it is a little bit stiffer, but it does work really, really well. In fact, A3 Tactical has a side folding stock series that you can run with the Sig Spear, so go check out their website for more accessories. This does have a Bubba tab and a Wiseman sling on it, or from Lunar Concepts, which obviously makes it legit. And it has the Unity riser with the Sig Romeo red dot. Running a Steiner D2 D-ball on here and a Surefire dual fuel scout light. As far as like the actual function and running of the gun, it was super, super smooth. And one of the things that I loved about this is it didn't feel like it was just beating me to death. It was a very, very smooth operating system. I was able to stay on target. It almost reminded me of some of our more softer, more well-gassed and tuned direct impingement ARs that are short. And I could almost not tell that it was a piston. You know, usually your pistons are going to have a little bit more harsher feel recoil because you got more mass coming back towards you. And I did not have this with this Sig Spear. Now, this is for the 11.5. Now, for the 16-inch Spear, we did have barrel flex with that. In fact, we didn't even do a video on that because there was barrel flex on it and it would not return back to center when we were shooting it. We had to actually physically push the barrel back to center, and we had to send that back. They sent us another one and it did the same thing again. So we ended up getting a 11.5 and it works, doesn't have that problem. It works great. The one thing that stinks about all of the Sig Spear LTs, and if you're going to get one, something to keep in mind, is whatever they put on for putting their muzzle device on there, their proprietary one, oh, gosh, it was like, it was a nightmare trying to get that thing off. You had to torch it, crank on it, take it to a gunsmith. It was insane. The amount of poundage worth of torque and work and sweat and tears and blood to get that muzzle device off was unnecessary. So whatever they're doing to put those muzzle devices on, stop. Everybody wants to swap them out. unless they got a SIG suppressor, which is not very many people, but just let us put our own devices on and don't Osama bin crank that thing on there and make it really, really difficult. The gas adjustment is really, really easy to get to. It runs really, really well suppressed. Obviously, that is a little bit, if not, I guess, the best test because we were using a Huxworks can, which the flow through really, really helped it out. The controls and everything about this gun just feels like an AR because you have a traditional charging handle like an AR. It's not a side charger, so you don't have to worry about it reciprocating or non-reciprocating. It's super soft, it's good recoil, it's lightweight, it feels very balanced. The only thing that absolutely kills me about this is I like it a lot, but it is so ungodly expensive. Like it is so expensive. Like I'm talking like $2,800. Now you get a lot for $2,800. Like you get a lot. You get a very good out of the box, ready to run, perfectly tuned everything out of the box gun for $2,800. But if you burn that barrel up, which if you guys shoot a lot and you know for guys who shoot all the time, you can actually run through barrels pretty quickly. And I think the replacement barrel on this thing is like almost $900 to replace the barrel. So kind of like a really, really nice sports car. You know, you get a really nice sports car, you pay a lot of money, you're gonna pay just as much money for maintenance. That's how I feel about this thing. It's almost to the point where you don't wanna put a high round count on it, which kind of defeats the purpose, because if it's gonna be your main squeeze and your main rifle that you run, that's something you're gonna have to consider. Set aside some of that money to replace parts. The other thing is also there's not a lot of aftermarket support outside of furniture and some accessories for it, as far as your internals that I know of. But you don't really need too much aftermarket support because everything is ambidextrous and it's ready to go out the box. So kind of levels itself out. This thing was a really, really nice gun, as much as I hate to say it. I really did like it. And so I gave it a rating of about 8.5. The price point really kills me, so that's why it's not getting a really high top rating. So I rate this at an 8.5. Let's go ahead and move on to the SCAR16 next. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the SCAR16. Now this is a 11.5 and it is infamous. It has been utilized by a Ranger Battalion. It's been used by a lot of different government agencies. Let's just say that. This thing is a classic. Obviously, it is something that a lot of people desire. It's really hard to find, but it does have a monolithic top rail. It does have a front sight post that's integrated into the gas block, and it has an easy adjustable gas block. You just turn it on to whatever mode you want, and it's very, very self-explanatory. The barrel actually is easily replaceable. All you gotta do is undo these 4 screws and pull the barrel assembly out, put a new barrel assembly in, and tighten it back down. Super, super easy. These screws are actually a ratcheting screw system, so you don't lose them. But as far as the barrel swaps, it's it's really easy to do. Super fast. Very, very lightweight system. Obviously, you get a side folding stock. The one that comes with the SCAR is absolutely hideous and is the infamous UGG boot, and it is ugly as all get out. The lower is made out of polymer. It is not a flared magwell, and it has a ambidextrous magazine release, but it does not have a ambidextrous bolt release. Now, one thing you can do is use that bolt release. It's similar to an AR bolt catch bolt release, and it will send that bolt home, or you can pull back on the charging handle and release it. There's a very, very large chunk of meat when it comes to the bolt that's coming back and reciprocating inside the gun. And it does have an ambidextrous safety, but it is really fat and clunky, and I don't really like it. Now, the stock trigger that comes in here is the same as like a mil-spec trigger you get in a standard AR-15. It's like 6 to 7, almost 8 pounds. It's a terrible trigger. Like, the trigger really stinks, and especially for the price point, dude. Like, really almost $3,800 and you can't put a nice trigger in there. It's kind of irritating. If you look at the trigger guard, it's also not flared out, so it's just flat on the bottom. You can get different grips that you can put on there. So you can get like a Magpul grip and swap that out. You can also even swap out the back stock. This is an ACR back stock. That is the folder, and then obviously A3 front foregrip for the furniture on the front. It does have two little sling mounts that you can use for a sling. The back ACR stock does have a QD attachment, and then there also is a clip-on sling point on the back. Typically, this thing is, I mean, it's honestly not that bad, but out of the box, it kind of stinks. Like, it really, you're paying $3,800 for this thing, and you're getting it as bone stock, like not fancy at all. And you have to do a lot to it. In fact, I think the only trigger that you can get for this is the Geisley upgrade trigger. You can upgrade the furniture if you wanted to, obviously swap out that ugly, hideous stock for ACR stock or something else that's cool. But overall, it's very underwhelming out of the box. Now, this trigger is the standard mil-spec trigger that came with it. We did swap it out for a war comp for the muzzle device, but I didn't really like this thing. It was cool. I really wanted to like it just because it's a classic. It's like a SOCOM special, but I did not like this thing. The barrel on this is almost $1,000. I'll say that again. To get a new barrel, it's almost $1,000. Like, that's a lot of money. So it's extremely high cost weapon system. You're gonna be paying, by the time that you're done upgrading it to just like a normal upgraded rifle, it's gonna be over $4 grand. You're looking probably almost $5,000 between everything said and done. Maybe we get some optics for it. But yeah, it's very, very reliable. The recoil on it is actually very repeatable. It seems kind of sluggish and slower whenever you're shooting it. It almost has like a typewriter feel. Like when you're shooting this thing, it's like deck, 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 deck. It has like a very typewriter type of feel, if that makes sense. Sometimes it feels like it, even though it's not. It almost feels like you can outrun the gun. But we've never outrun it. It's just the way that the gun feels whenever you're shooting it. As far as keeping the gun on target, very, very easy to keep on target. The biggest thing that you get out of this is obviously the weight. It is a very, very lightweight rifle. And out of all the three, I would say it's almost the same weight, probably a little bit lighter than the Sig Spear. So that was really nice. Between this thing being high cost, lightweight, you know, very predictable, not a super concussive or disruptive recoil and running of this gun, we would give it a rating of about 5.5 to 6. So, which is sad because I really, really wanted to like this gun a lot, and it's just not super. It's just not something that you would see your average Joe getting and getting into. There's a lot you got to do to it. Now, when you upgrade these things, I've seen some guys who've upgraded these bad boys, and they run fast and they're really, really cool. But it goes back to, you got to pump a lot of dough into this to be able to make it into something that's legit. So, out of everything being said, we give it a rating of about 5.5 to 6. So with all that being said, when it comes to all three of those systems, I would like to just put it out there on the back end, again, once more, that these are just our opinions. We had the opportunity to shoot a lot of rounds through all three of these rifles and really get a good feel for them. And based off of what our experiences were, price point, aftermarket support, availability of parts, all those things, that was kind of how we came up with our rating system. And even that's not perfect. We're just kind of pulling out of the air about which ones we like the most based off of which had more pros versus cons. At the end of the day though, it really comes down to you as the shooter. If you don't put in the rounds downrange, you're not able to formulate those opinions. So, you know, 2024 should be the year of training. Things aren't getting any better. So the biggest thing that you could do is, instead of dumping a ton of money into a very exotic type rifle, take that money and dump it back into investing in yourself and paying for ammo and investing in training. And then it doesn't matter what you're running, because you, the shooter, are the one that's going to be capable. I could stick whatever in your hands and you're going to make it happen. So at the end of the day, make sure you're investing in yourself. Guys, I wanted to thank you for watching this episode. If you did get something out of it, please share it with a friend or a family member. At the end of the day, we had a lot of fun doing this episode. But if you have not already and you want to see behind the scenes type things of when we're doing video filming or kind of what's coming up next, go check out our Instagram page, and then also go check out our Hatchet Cast podcast that we do every week. And it's on YouTube as well as on Spotify. So we put it on both of those channels. If you are nervous that YouTube's gonna shut us down, go check out our Rumble if you are not about the YouTube thing. So go check out our Rumble. Every episode that's on YouTube is also put on Rumble. Before we leave, guys, at the end of the day, I wanna leave you guys with a small passage from Mark chapter 5, and this is verse 21. And I'm just going to do some reading here. So Jesus had crossed again over by boat to the other side of the lake. A large crowd had gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders, named Jairus, came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed him and pressed around him. So there's people all over the place and people pressing around Jesus as they're going towards this guy's house. And a woman who was there had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, "If I just touch his clothes, I will be healed." Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out of him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched me?" "You see the people crowding around you?" his disciples asked. "Yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, trembling with fear, and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." Guys, I know that we live in a time where obviously we're talking about gun stuff and the economy and things like that. And this is sometimes a good distraction to be able to get away from the struggles of life. And one of the things that I can say is that there is hope and peace in Jesus, and that we can rely on him during those hard times, just like that woman who was sick for 12 years and had spent all of her life savings on trying to get healed through doctors and the medical system and all this stuff. And she had the faith that just by touching Jesus' robe as he is pressing through the crowd, that she would be healed. And so for my fellow believers out there who are Christians and believe in Jesus, make sure that you strive to have faith like that woman. And if you do not have or do not know the Lord and do not know Jesus, and you are curious about who he is and reading from the Bible, which is the book of truth, get a hold of us. Send it in the comment section. Get a hold of us. We would love to send you a Bible. And we would love to pray for you. If you guys have any prayer requests as well about anything that's going on in your life, we do a prayer meeting once a week before our podcast recording, and we would love to get your prayer requests in. We do pray on every single one of those prayer requests and offer them up to the Lord. Guys, we truly care about you guys. The Barrel and Hatchet community is what we're here for, and we want to let you know that there are so many people who are hurting and are just going through the toughest that life can throw at them, even in our Barrel and Hatchet community. So if you need prayer, let us know. If you need or would like to know about Jesus Christ, who can be your Savior and bring you peace and comfort, get a hold of us. Guys, make sure you train to be the eternal asset. Always seek hope and love, and we will see you on the next one.